Hey everyone, I wanted to go over the proper assembly of a Mikado logo tail. I've seen people have issues with tail wag and things like that, and I wanted to try to prevent that in the future for when people do assembly. And there's a few things that you don't take close note of and might make a small mistake which causes an issue. The first thing I do is I check the grips themselves. I check the inside of the grips to make sure that there's no flashing around the edge where that bearing sits. And the easiest way to check it for me is to take a razor knife and just run it along the edge like this. And if you feel anything grabbed, then you know you got a little bit of flashing there. And if not, then it's nice and smooth. You check them both. You go around, just around the edge one time, around where the two sides meet around the corner. These appear to be clean. There's nothing wrong with them. So we're going to install the bearings. Okay, so you got your radial bearings that go in first inside the grips. So I always lubricate these guys with silicone oil, nothing special. Just don't use anything petroleum based on anything helicopter related because it'll hack plastic over time. You only need to put a little bit of oil on the one side. You don't have to do both sides because it'll get in and penetrate and do what it's supposed to do. Okay, so now you install the radial bearings. You get one in the back here. And you make sure it's flat, make sure it's installed, and make sure that it's completely flush with the side of the actual grip itself. Okay, second one goes on the inside. I like to take it and put it in here to where it, jumped out, to where it sits almost flush, and then I take a secondary tool, which is usually like a socket or something like that. It's just about the size of the bearing. Line it up and push it in and make sure it's flush. And if you look inside, you can see that that bearing is completely flush. It's not sitting sideways. It's not cocked in any way, shape, or form. Okay, I'm gonna do the second one the same way. Make sure that's in, make sure it's flush, and it is. Take the second one, drop it in, get it lined up, push it in, make sure it's flush, okay? So now that guy is ready to go as far as the radial bearings are concerned. You can go ahead and set these to the side. Okay, so now the rest of the assembly comes with the thrust bearings, the washers, and the dampeners. All right, so this is the tail shaft, the feathering shaft for the tail. So the Logo 700 tail builds a lot like the head. It's got a lot of the same parts. They go in the same order, slightly different on a couple of things, but there's a few things you do need to make sure. You need to make sure that your radial bearing, the way it's assembled is exactly correct. The center bearing, or the actual bearing itself with the balls on it, doesn't matter if you do them cage up or cage down, as long as both of them are the same. But it does make a difference if the one slightly larger or smaller part of the radial bearing is in the right position. And the way you can check, an easy way to check, is you can actually take the radial bearing and you can slide it on the shaft, and you can see it moves around. It actually wiggles a little bit, okay? And then you take another one and you slide it on the shaft, and you notice it's a tight fit. It's not, it doesn't move around, okay? So that means that one of these guys is smaller than the other one, all right? This is gonna be a tight fit as well, and this is gonna be a loose fit. Now, most of the kits on the back of the bearing itself, it'll have an X. See that X on the back there? So you can see, but this is a way, like if you have problems seeing with your eyes or anything like that, you can see, you might not be able to see that X very clearly. Like this one doesn't have the X on it. It doesn't mean it's faulty, it just means the X either rubbed off or it's just not easily seen, but you can still tell that it's the bigger one because it wobbles on the shaft, okay? I orient them like this, that way I don't get confused about which way they go. All right, so the first thing we need to do is get the hub, get the dampeners installed in the hub. Now what I do is I take the actual dampener themselves dead dry. I don't do any lube on them at all, and I install them into the hub on each side. There's 6 total, 3 on each side. Okay, get those guys pressed in. These are going to be a little bit tight, so you got to make sure the first and the second ones are in all the way. So I usually take like a small tool and I push in Make sure these guys are indicated. They slide in all the way. Third one, and I go to the other side, install the dampeners as well. And these guys are going to be a little bit loose on the outside because when you assemble the tail, that's what actually presses the dampeners the rest of the way in. Now, what I do from this point is, if it's a head and the feathering shaft is kind of, I mean, I guess a feathering shaft is the best idea to call it. If it's a little tight, I'll lube the inside of the dampeners and slide the shaft in. But this is a tail, and the shaft is really small. It's not really hard to do. So I take this guy and I go ahead and stick it in one side here. Okay, you can see the dampener is actually coming out, which isn't a problem. I get the other side flush with the table, and I press until it's flush completely. Now get on this side, you'll see that the dampener and the shaft are flush with each other. Now you can take this and just push it to where it's a little over half, a little more than half, doesn't really matter. And once you get it about halfway, you'll see that the dampeners will kind of stay where they're supposed to be. Now this one, you see it's kind of popping out. You just want to make sure it's completely level all the way around, which it is, okay? All right, this is the part that's probably the most important. There's a shim here that people don't realize it's actually stepped on one side. It's really, really hard to see, but if you put on your glasses, you take a look. If you look at this shim itself on one side, you'll see just a slight raised edge on one side and a not slight raised edge on the other, okay? So that shim is going to make a big difference on where the install, how it's installed with the bearings on the inside of the tail itself, okay? So the next set of bearings, shims, are going to be these guys. These are just like squash shims. I call them squash shims. Basically, they're there to basically push onto the dampeners themselves to help them load the head itself, or load the tail. Now I'm gonna leave that side off so it didn't fall off. I'm gonna slide a grip on to the tail, okay? Now you wanna make sure when you do that it's nice and smooth. You don't have any hitting or anything like that. You can see this is smooth, it moves easily. And now you wanna make sure that you install the grip also, that you install it the right way. Because when it's on the tail itself, it's gonna be spinning counterclockwise. So if you install it this way and you put the other one on, you're gonna have it backwards. So just make sure you install it correctly. And then we're gonna go for the bearings. So I'm gonna put this guy down. All right, so here are my bearings. Now what I wanna do is, I don't need to lubricate those with anything oil-wise, but I do wanna lubricate them with the grease. This is the grease that I use. It's silicone-based grease. So I take the one side, I'll go ahead and get my grease going. This applicator is really, really nice. I can't remember where I got this from. Somebody gave it to me at Urcha a few years ago, and it works really, really well. Get the grease on all four of the outsides of the radial bearing, of the thrust bearings. Take your time, go ahead and get it in there. Now, sometimes you can overdo it, it's not a big deal. It just makes it a little bit harder as far as a mess. Like you see, kind of stuck to my finger there. And I'll put a little bit more on there. Catch this other one. And then the last one. All right, so now that I got my bearings lubricated, I like to put mine cage down towards the top side. Doesn't really matter one way or the other though. And then I put the side, which is the big side, it's gonna go in first on top. So it's all sandwiched together. It's all lubricated, ready to go, okay? So now that I have that ready, what I'll do is I'll take one of my tools, I'll slide that sandwich onto the tool, just like this, and then help it get into the grip. It slides in just like that. It's nothing serious, nothing special. It's not hard to do. Once that guy's in, then I get my screw that basically holds the whole assembly together. And I forgot my Loctite, so give me just a second. circumstances, you want to forget your Loctite or a tail assembly, actually any assembly that's spinning. But you want to make sure that you have it on each of those. I get my Loctite installed on my screw. It's important that you don't get too much going into here, because if it doesn't stay on the screw and it gets out and bleeds through to the thrust bearings, it could cause your thrust bearings to bind, which will cause a tail wag, okay? So, yeah, I already see that I've made a mistake. So let's go ahead and fix that mistake, which was the whole bearing that I told you guys about, or the washer that I was telling you guys about, okay? Go ahead and get this back out. All right, this side is flat. This side has a slight raise to it, and that's the side that's gonna go towards the bearing. So I'm gonna take this guy, slide it in, make sure it's sitting completely flush, and that it's not turned the wrong way. And look inside and verify that it's the smooth side, because they want the step side goes towards the bearing. And then I want to slide these back in. Okay, goes right around that shaft, nice and pretty. See it on the inside. And now I'm gonna screw with the Loctite. You don't have to get it super tight right now. Just basically it's holding everything together until you get the other side on, and then that's gonna make everything stay where it needs to go. Okay, all right, one side's done. Now we're gonna get our crush washer on this side, or smash washer, or whatever you wanna call it. Slide this guy on. Okay. Yeah, I told you guys to be sure you build it right, and I almost built it wrong. There we go. Because the tail's gonna be spinning counterclockwise, which means this is gonna be the leading edge of the tail. All right, so looks like my bearing moved just a little bit on the inside. So let's go ahead and make that correction. Take your tool, push it down, make sure it's good to go. I'm gonna lift this off and push it back in just to be sure. Okay, I'm good to go. Slide this back on. Okay, it's being a little bit of a pain, but it takes the, take your time and make sure it's correct. There we go, snap it in. Get that around. Okay. Slide this guy back on. Perfect, there we go. Now it's slid in. Now we want to take our washer. That's the smooth side, if you can barely see it. And this side, I mean, it almost looks like a line, and it is so small of a step, but it's there. You want to slide the guy in, you want to make sure it's correct. So let's do this. Make sure it doesn't flip on us. Okay. All right, so verify that's the smooth side on the inside. That's kind of hard to see, but it's there. There's no line on the inside. Now I want to get my guys here. Slide those on. One side's nice and tight, the other side loose. I'll grab my tool, press down on that. All right, now my second screw, which is here. Get my Loctite on it. Make sure it gets all the way around the screw. Got a little too much there. Okay, it's all good. Get it in spot. Now, once you've got this thing assembled, or you get these 2 screws in, you gotta obviously get them tight to where it doesn't cause any issues. And if you just keep turning, it just spins the shaft inside the thing that's not helping you. So you grab your second 2.5 millimeter, stick it on the opposite side. You got 2 of them, screw against each other, and that should be it. Now when you're done, this should be nice and smooth. As you can see, not having any issues, nothing crunching, nothing crunchy, nothing like that. Both sides nice and smooth. If it's crunchy on one side, there's a chance that you may have that washer backwards. So this guy should be good to go. All right, so that's the proper way to build a logo tail. And if you also take a look, you can actually look at the dampeners now. You can see that everything's lined up. There's no dampeners poking out between the hub and the side. There's nothing misaligned. Everything's where it needs to be. So now when I put this on the helicopter, I shouldn't have any issues with wag or anything like that. So if you guys have any questions, you know how to hit me up on here on YouTube, or you can hit me up on Instagram at laughingstill2, or you can email me at vstabby@mikadousa.com. Hope this helps. If you have any questions, hit me up. Bye.